So this panel is about personalization. And I'm going to have everyone introduce themselves and talk a little bit about themselves, their company, and what personalization means to them. But I want to start with 3 statistics because I love statistics. So I was talking to an analyst from Forrester yesterday for a story I'm writing, and it's about personalization. And he told me that 9 out of 10 organizations, personalization is their top priority for 2018. 70% of retail stores are trying to personalize the in-store experience. And 3 out of 4 consumers respond more quickly and more positively to a personalized approach than a generic one. So with that in mind, I want to ask everyone to start. We'll start with Danny.
Hi, I'm Danny Cushion. I'm the CMO at Cardlytics. We are a purchase intelligence platform based out of Atlanta. And what we mean by that is we run bank cashback rewards programs for about 2,000 banks in the United States and Europe. As a result, since we offer these loyalty programs to banks, we sit in the middle and bring merchants or marketers to bear to be able to target and reach bank customers within the online banking and mobile app environment. And as such, we have a massive aggregation of data at Cardlytics. We see about $1.5 trillion in spend a year, or 20 billion transactions, which in human speak is about 1 in 5 card swipes. And so with that, we have this huge bit of data, we layer analytics on top of it, and we make it useful to be able to help marketers reach the most likely buyers, and really from the bank perspective, to be able to help banks make a better bank customer by giving their customers something of value to them when they go online or in their mobile app to do their banking.
Great, thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Scott Rowan, and I'm with BlackRock. BlackRock is a financial services firm that helps large institutions manage money, whether it's a pension fund or an end investor looking for an ETF. We manage about just over $6 trillion, and we have software that helps manage close to $20 trillion. So obviously, similarly, we are always looking at data and trying to figure out how we take insights and turn it into mutually beneficial outcomes for our different constituents.
Great. My name's Tim Hong. I lead up the product and marketing teams at MoneyLion. We are a mobile personal finance platform to really empower consumers with better borrowing, saving, and investing. Whether, even if you're someone who doesn't have a great credit score, or you're part of the 70% of Americans that have less than $2,000 in spending. We've provided, we have over, or nearly 2 million users. We've provided over 250,000 loans and brokerage accounts to our customers. And so personalization at scale is a necessity. We really believe that personalization of financial advice, of really products themselves is critical to being able to solve some of these really tough challenges of the financial middle class.
Hi, I'm Derek Carpenter. I work for Bank of America Merchant Services, which is a joint venture between Bank of America and First Data. We're a merchant services organization, so we process transactions for about 600,000 merchants in the United States. We focus on everything from obviously processing transactions to fraud, to gift and loyalty solutions, to analytics. And from a personalization perspective, I think what we're seeing is a lot of trends as merchants are going in that digital path, down the digital path. They're really looking at how do they create unique experiences in lots of those different places. So
That's terrific, great. So that's a general introduction. So I'm going to ask everyone, if they haven't already addressed it, why personalized? What is your company getting out of it? What do you hope to get out of it? Danny, if you want to start.
I'll start. So from Cardlytics' perspective, we really have 3 constituents that we're looking at. So there is the bank's customer, and the marketer. And so since we are actually bringing marketers or advertisers into the bank channel, if you think about this as a separate channel where we have all of these online banking and mobile apps and online banking sites, think of it as an advertising channel. The advertiser gets the ability to be able to reach the most likely buyer for their ad. So again, we use our data and analytics to be able to help target based on past purchase history. So rather than using demographics or behavioral information, we look at actual past spend to be able to put ads in front of people who are most likely to take advantage of that as a likely buyer. So from a marketer's perspective, if you're a Starbucks, for instance, you want to know who is loyal and who's not. You know everything about your customer if you're a major retailer, but you don't necessarily know where they're spending outside of your own store. And so having a broader view of what we would call purchase intelligence and data allows the marketer to make more effective marketing decisions. From the bank side, it's all about the value to the customer. And so the banks that work with us run programs that are driving loyalty, stronger lifetime value, lower attrition, higher card spend. And so for the bank perspective, it's not often that you have a program that actually gets to drive net promoter scores up. Not a lot, no offense, but not a lot of people are super in love with their banks. So it's important for a bank to be able to connect with a customer. And so from our perspective, being able to take all of this data and normalize it so that you can then personalize at scale is really what we get out of it.
I'm going to follow up with you. So you talked about advertising, but where do consumers see these ads?
So if you were to pull up your Bank of America app, for instance, I'll use an example, or Regions, or SunTrust, or Santander, you go within your actual app. So you go within the bank's native app, or you go online banking when you're thinking about managing your spending and your money, and you are presented with offers that will give you money back based on what you're spending. And so you would click on that offer, or click on that ad, and it's all personalized based on your spend history, anonymously. So I'm a mom of 3. I'm a working mom, so I get all kinds of Whole Foods, Starbucks, J.Crew. I get things that are customized to me, so it's relevant, that is coming from the bank. We're white labeling the solution for those banks. And so the bank is helping the customer earn money back on things they like to buy already. And so it gives the bank an opportunity to give more value back to the customer when they go in that bank portal.
Would I see those ads on Facebook or Google as well?
Not yet, no.
Right, not yet.
Not yet. The stuff that's coming through Facebook and Google, I would say that is their own channel. We have our own channel of all of these bank online and mobile apps. And so it's important for us because particularly in the advertising space, there's so much ad fraud happening right now that bots don't have bank accounts. And it's
not yet.
I hope not. And there's this lovely thing of working with banks called legal risk and compliance that you sort of have to go through a lot of hurdles to make sure, and it's a good thing. You know as an advertiser that you're reaching real people who have real bank accounts because the PII for that person is pristine. Right. It must be.
Yeah, that's great. Scott?
I think, personalization is super important, but it really is a means to an end. You brought up Net Promoter Score, and we look at that as well. That is really important to us to leverage personalization to make sure the experience is better. And things like Net Promoter Score are where we focus and ensure that we're leveraging the data, the analytics, the capabilities for personalization to drive real outcomes. Both, and I mentioned this earlier, mutual benefit. So we've got a great outcome for our customers, clients, and investors, but also for us internally so that we can serve them better and potentially find opportunities to promote different products and services that meet their needs specifically.
I think of investing and advice, I think of it as already a one-to-one relationship, isn't it?
Well, it is, and that's where the beauty of the data and the personalization come in, because as we scale up, you can imagine serving the number of clients that we do, I mentioned before, over $6 trillion, to try to do that one-to-one becomes very difficult. But what we're trying to do is take that same service model that we do face-to-face and then bring it into the digital format.
That's great. Tim?
Sure. I think it starts with our mission around improving financial outcomes for our customer. I think very similar to what Scott said, but in a different lens. If you have $500 in savings, and the reality is you're not going to get a personalized financial advisor that's going to really look through your balance sheet and give you financial advice. And so it starts with that really simple, almost operational or logistical challenge of how do you provide good advice to someone that's actually cognizant of their needs and their spending patterns. And ultimately, a lot of what we get inspired by is things around behavioral economics and how do we change and form habits. And now everyone has different habits they want to form and different habits we want to change. And so that process, using things like their credit profile or their bank transaction history, is really part and parcel of how we deliver our advice every day via our mobile app.
It seems like you're sort of the counterpoint to BlackRock. You're not talking about trillions of dollars of investments, right?
No, for a lot of our customers, it's a victory just to get started saving.
Right.
And so how do you kickstart that process? How do you determine if someone's more receptive to that kind of advice, whether it's on a Monday or in January, or all these kind of techniques that can really change behavior.
So the audience you're trying to reach, though, is people who have low credit, low account value. I'm wondering if that's the same audience like the audience here, or the audience that's more inclined to use technology to solve a problem like that.
Well, I think, technology is really just a tool we use to be able to, it's a channel by which we can reach this audience. Mm-hmm. We saw from the beginning when we were founded in 2013 that over 70% of folks on our web apps were using the mobile app. And so it was really obvious kind of transition for us to start using these other kind of platforms to reach folks. And the reality is that they're not getting that same level of service when they go into a branch.
Right. Okay. Derek?
Yeah, I think we come at it a little bit. I'm just on the other side of the view, where they're a little bit more consumer driven. We're really out there supporting businesses that are trying to engage consumers in many cases, and so our focus right now, and why we think kind of personalization is taking over in the marketplace, is we see tons of our customers wanting to engage with their customers in a digital way, whether it be a mobile app, whether it be on their website, or just different experiences in their stores and things like that. So one of the things that the areas we see really improved services being kind of delivered at this point is fraud. It's really around how can I deliver a different level of service to customers I know versus the ones I don't know, and how can I better kind of personalize that experience to ensure that they're getting treated in a special way rather than just a generic approach to everyone. And so that's one big major way that we see personalization kind of happen in our space.
That's terrific. Great. So I'm going to ask you all my favorite question, which is, what's in it for me? Answer in one sentence. Why do I, the consumer, want your services to be more personalized? Danny?
Start. In one sentence, having offers or cashback rewards delivered to me based on what is relevant to me, that is not intrusive, that is done in a place where I'm thinking about spending and saving money, can save me a whole lot of money. At Cardlytics, we've delivered hundreds of millions of dollars in rewards back to customers. And so from a consumer standpoint, it is done completely anonymously, but it is done in a way that gives real in-the-pocket value back to a customer.
That's great. More than one sentence, but I'll let you go.
That was a comma between each one.
And a few semicolons.
Semicolon, yeah.
I'll loan her some words and just go with one word: time.
Ooh,
To build on it, I think more and more people, what we're seeing based on feedback and research, is time is the most precious thing that our customers have. And if we can get them to what they need more quickly, they're happy.
That's great. Tim?
I've talked about it, but I would agree with everyone here. For us, we look at it as managing your financial life is something you have to do. It's not like social media. It's not something you want to do. It's a means to an end in terms of where you're trying to go or what you're trying to accomplish in life. And so we optimize around 5-minute experiences every day to build these habits rather than like 3 hours once a month. And when you only have 5 minutes, you really have a question around what is the most relevant, most impactful content that can change behaviors, right? And so if you're telling someone that they need to change their coffee habits, but they only get coffee once a month, and that's how they can save money, that's just not a very relevant message. But if you're telling someone, as an example, that their balance is low and they're within 24 hours of getting an overdraft fee, then you've got some relevancy, some urgency, and you're making good use of someone's time.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of tag onto that, I think trust, if you can demonstrate that you know this person and that you're delivering value, they trust you. And then, they want to continue to kind of grow that relationship. So, yeah.
That's terrific. Right. So it sounds simple, personalization. I know it's not. What's the hardest thing to do? What's the biggest challenge to overcome? And I'm going to start with Derek this time.
I think it's a little bit of kind of what you were touching on was that there's kind of this big brother view of things. There's a fine balance between using data that feels like you're overreaching and you're kind of breaching that trust factor. And so how do you kind of balance that with delivering the service and making sure it's a kind of a cohesive experience?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge for us was that we had to align our organization around personalization, and a lot of that's around our tech stack. If you look at our mobile app, we had to design with personalization in mind, and that's a really important thing. And it's not just about charts and things like that, but really a personalization framework. And a lot of where we were inspired were by companies like Netflix and Amazon, where they faced a very fundamental but very similar but much larger scale problem, which was that they had an entire inventory, I guess, whether it's movies or products. We had that same inventory in terms of financial advice, like how could we change your behaviors, things like that. And then on the other side, a set of data about the customer. We had bank transaction data, we had credit data, we had behavioral data, things like that. And how do you then match that set of inventory with that set of data? And that's actually a fairly well-known kind of math problem. And we wanted to align that math problem with the ultimate user experience in our channel and the personalization. And so, aligning around those things was one of the most challenging pieces.
I think for us, it just put so much more focus on getting to the insight. Personalization can execute on that, but we've had to spend a lot more time being crisp about when you synthesize all the data, what story is that telling? Is it actionable? Can it change behavior? And is it mutually beneficial? And if it checks those 4 boxes, then we feel like we have a strong insight that we can act on. And that's when personalization really can work its magic.
From our perspective, it's twofold. So there's the tech side, and then there's the trust side. On the tech side, transaction strings coming in from banks are super messy. They're not all built the same. They are across all of our network of banks. They all look different, even within certain merchants or certain brands. There are different POS setups, and so it takes a lot to be able to ingest the data, clean it, normalize it, to even get it to the point where you can find insights and make it actionable. So that, I think, from our perspective, is the biggest challenge that we face, is being able to set up our tech stack so that it's scalable and it can ingest and make sense of huge amounts of data so that it is usable, so that you can then personalize at scale. But the other side is the trust factor, like Derek said. My sister works in New York City, and she walked into a retailer, an unnamed retailer. And within a minute of walking out, she got a real-time notification saying, "Hey, we know you were here. Why don't you go check out da-da-da?" Creepy, too much. There is a way to do it that is elegant. It's harder because it's a sliding scale for each person.
Right.
But I think it is still trying to test and learn to feel what is acceptable. Some people like that level of personalization. Most do not. That is really awful. And not giving making sure that people know that there is a really clear and obvious way to opt out of that kind of stuff is really important.
Well, that brings up one of the key issues that occurs to me, which is the creepy factor, right? How do you guys avoid the creepy factor? How do you get an opt-in that people realize they're opting into? How do you deal with potential backlash from consumers? You've kind of addressed it, Danny, so maybe Scott.
Yeah, I think the first lens we put on is we think about servicing, not sales. And it's more of a mindset, but it allows us to make sure if we really think what we're doing from a personalization standpoint is serving our customers better, then we feel like we'll avoid some of the creepiness factor. Once we start putting on that lens of how do we sell them in these different ways, you're immediately starting to cross that line. And you can still use it for sales, but we try to put service first.
I mean, I think a lot of the techniques are really around first how you onboard customers, how they opt in, not like from a legal standpoint, but from a user experience standpoint. I mean, the other part we do is that we do a lot of conversations and interviews and testing with customers, not necessarily even on a quantitative basis, but a qualitative basis. You know, we had created a kind of like a job loss detector because we can see direct deposits, and obviously job loss is a big reason people default on things like loans. And there's a number of interventions that you can do, you know, if that happens. You know, we did not release that because it was one of those things that we just couldn't get comfortable with the user experience on it. And that was a result of not like some quantitative thing where we released and see how people responded, but just a lot of conversations with our customers.
Yeah, no, not being really at the bleeding edge, I wouldn't say that we necessarily run into a lot of these problems that, you know, a lot of our clients are running into these. And so I would just say, you know, what we see is, you know, us having access to 1 out of every 2 transactions that kind of process in the country, you know, it gives us a big set of data. And what we do normally is we work closely with those CMOs and the other team members inside of our clients to really kind of build that data set, like you guys were saying, to help come up with the right decisions around that.
That's great. So all of you guys have talked a lot about data, and all of it has implied a phrase no one has used yet, which is artificial intelligence. So, and we're certainly seeing a lot of it at CES this year. Everything's AI. So how important is AI? I'll just open it up to anyone who wants to answer. How important is AI to what you're talking about?
I'll take it. It's sort of a bingo term.
Yeah.
Right? It's a buzzword, the buzzword bingo we used to play inside. AI means a lot of things to a lot of different people. I think from our perspective, AI, as we would probably define it as at Cardlytics, is sort of that intersection of the data and advanced analytics, and I mean, machine learning is another sort of buzzword bingo, you know, thing you can put out there. But that intersection of how are you using analytics and the human component to be able to make things better for people. I think the way that we look at it, it's still super early if you're thinking about that consumer connection point. And so we don't use the term AI, quite frankly. We use advanced analytics, we use machine learning, right. But there are things that we can do as far as building predictive algorithms that actually ensure that we're using the data analytics that we need to help enable people to do more stuff. It has been it's been in almost every single panel I've heard here too.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't use the term, quite frankly.
4-letter word, AI?
It's not. No, it's not. It's just it's sort of like native advertising has been for a long time. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and it's a super important conversation to have. It's just still, it's not. I don't think it's quite well defined yet.
Okay.
I was going to add on. I mean, we kind of focus on that machine learning side of things. You know, back to what I opened with is, you know, in where we see it most is in that experience from that merchants are delivering to consumers around fraud. You know, there's that population of merchants and the activity that they're doing in their stores or on their websites or on their mobile apps is constantly changing, and so that, you know, the machine it's learning constantly and it's making different decisions, and then, you know, we're able to deliver a different experience. So I think that's kind of where we do see most of that.
There's a really interesting challenge going on right now, a radiology challenge. Basically what they're trying to do is determine the best way to identify cancer within lymph nodes. And the team that's winning right now, it's a 2-year challenge, is a group between Harvard and MIT. And they've taken a really interesting approach where they have, of course, a pathologist, an expert looking at this, but they've also employed machine learning techniques, and they've also looked at a combined or hybrid approach. And what they've found so far, at least, and they're winning this challenge, is that when they use just the AI, the machine learning technique, they have a lot of success, but the error rate is about 7.5%. When just the pathologist, the expert, was looking at it, was 3.5%. But when they did the hybrid, it dropped to 0.5%. So yes, it's a total buzzword, and it's almost too much, but you do see real outcomes with it. And obviously, we're not quite there yet in realizing its potential, but we feel really excited, but also firmly that it's the hybrid of human and machines, and it's not just about the bots, but the brains and the bots that really show a lot of potential.
So my question to that is, are the machines helping the humans, or are the humans helping the machines?
Yes.
Well, in this case, very literally, the machines are helping the humans. They are helping the pathologist, and they're helping the patient. And I think the key insight there is that together, working together, they're getting a better outcome for all of us.
So we're not out of a job yet.
Not yet.
Awesome.
Keep working on it.
Tim, anything about AI?
Sure. I mean, we view machine learning. Our company was founded on these kind of things, so I actually did not use those words, but I should have. But we view these things as tools in your toolkit, and in that very real sense, they're driven by humans. When we talk about personalization, a lot of the time we focus less on kind of the mathematical techniques that achieve it, but more on the framework and success criteria that we're trying to optimize for. Are we optimizing for some sort of click-through on our advice? Are we optimizing for longer-term changes in outcome? We spend a lot of time on those questions, and whether it's a regression or machine learning or random forest, those kind of things end up being just techniques that our data scientists know how to use, but are amongst their full set of toolkit.
That's great. So how do you know it's working? How do you know that your efforts at personalizing are a success? What kind of metrics are important to you? And I'll start with Derek.
Yeah, I think. So again, I look at it through the lens of a client, and so we have a lot of really big, strong national brands that have rolled out a lot of these digital experiences, large coffee brands, and you've seen, and they've seen just a strong push into those channels, and they're able to deliver a different experience, more personalized experience based on what those consumers are doing. And so that's the biggest thing that we're seeing, is that when you see that conversion into those new kind of channels where it allows you to have a communication with the customer versus just a face-to-face transaction.
I don't think there's any one thing. I think it kind of varies by your efforts there. Some of it for us is going to be financially outcome related, like what things are seen to drive higher credit scores, as an example, or increase savings in their brokerage account. Other times we're just simply looking for, this is especially from a literacy standpoint, we're looking for education. We're looking for things like, click-through rates and read times, things like that. And then, sometimes it's as simple as conversion, right? So we're kind of balancing all of those, and different pieces have different objectives.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. We'll look at everything from a servicing standpoint. We talked about Net Promoter Score earlier, all the way to managing portfolios better. So it really just depends on the objective.
Okay.
And from our perspective, again, it comes down to the three audiences we address. We address marketers, bank consumers, and the banks. From a marketer's perspective, there's a client that we work with, Advanced Auto Parts, who used to just target based on the past purchase history of people that were not shopping with them. So they did not reach out to their loyals. And they based it on their own CRM data. And when we actually helped them look at where else are those people spending, their loyal customers were actually spending more with their competitors. they were just really heavy category buyers. And so when you can open up the targeting on something like that, we drove an additional $1 million in sales for them in that campaign. And so from a marketer's perspective, it's really easy to see what works because you can segment and slice so tight based on whether someone is loyal, whether they're not loyal, have they spent with me in the past 6 months, have they never spent with me? You can see the results in real sales. From a consumer standpoint, it's pretty obvious because you can see them spending more with banks. You can see them going online more, activating offers more, so you know that the experience is good for them. When we do UX, UI changes, we can see a really significant lift because I think the gentleman in the panel before us was talking about UI, and it's important. It's important to make sure it's intuitive so you can actually see real results based on what's coming through. And then from a bank's perspective, they continue to work with us and innovate and roll out through new channels like email and other things that are continuing to offer value back to their customers.
So you measure it in money.
It's pretty measurable. It's pretty measurable, yep.
The ultimate metric.
Yep.
Right? Yeah. Consumers have a lot of choices these days. I probably have a dozen financial apps on my phone. Yeah. And there's probably more I should have and don't. So I'm wondering if there are too many choices. Are we reaching a point where it's too confusing? And if so, is there going to be a point where things start to consolidate? And I'm just going to leave it open to anyone who wants to answer.
Yeah, I'll say it from my perspective in the payments world, which we've seen a lot of these applications, whether any of the phone wallets to everything from every merchant wallet to every QSR that you go to it just continues to go. And I think we were all used to a very ubiquitous experience of a card, right? It was the same everywhere, kind of how you did it. Mm-hmm. Now it seems it's very different, and there's quite a bit of options out there. And so yeah, I think some consumers are overwhelmed sometimes, and so we see it when our merchants, mid-market guys are launching apps, and you're starting to get hundreds of apps out there that all kind of do the same thing. And so yeah, I think it'll be an interesting play over the next couple of years to see does the market drive to some simplified versions that kind of all solve that. And you're seeing it with Apple Pay and some of the other things that have kind of like worked their way into most of these kind of merchant-driven models.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'd like to think that personalization helps with that exact challenge. Our mantra was just making money more approachable and just trying to make that, that doesn't necessarily speak to the wide breadth of apps out there, but certainly in terms of decisions like should I, if I get a $2,000 bonus from work, do I pay off my credit card debt? Do I put it into investing, or do I do something else with it, right? We hope we can answer those questions over time, and maybe simplify that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the options are good, and a lot of great work that comes out of different segments probably wouldn't happen at the same speed if it was all consolidated. So I think it's a good thing. It does pose a much more difficult challenge to marketers that are trying to break through. I think the idea of just breaking through the clutter now is a harder thing to tackle as a result, but absolutely believe that more is probably a good thing for at least the near term.
Yeah, I agree. And from a marketer's perspective, it's eventually going to come down to scale, and scale will come based on a good user experience. Are people getting value from what they're using? Not to geek out on this too much, but the UK right now is going through something really interesting with PSD2, where the regulations that have kicked in the beginning of this year, they're the open banking APIs. Everybody's trying to figure out what this means and how do we perhaps make sure that Tesco loyalty is different from this, is different from this. There's so many people who are trying to own the consumer. There's going to be some kind of it's up to the consumer. What does the consumer see value in? There's absolutely going to be some kind of consolidation. Whomever is owning that consumer's loyalty and trust, to make it easier for them, is going to win, I think.
That's great. So we have, about 2 minutes, I think? 2 minutes? Okay. So I don't think there's enough time for audience questions. Perhaps we can come up and talk to everyone later if you have things you want to ask everyone. So let's just wrap up. So what's the top takeaway or top 2 takeaways you want our audience to walk away with? Derek, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think for us, when we're working with clients, it's really about get your strategy in place, understand what data you need, and start to like assemble the tools to, I think, to deliver a personalized experience to the consumer at the end of the day. I think it's engage your partners, right? Like these are a lot of great examples right here.
I mean, our North Star is just the customer, and it's, you know, everything falls from that. We thought about, you know, personalization for us is a means to an end. And so we started with the customer, started with the challenges in servicing that customer, the needs of that customer, and just went from there.
Yeah, and just to build on that, one step farther is just what's that customer insight that we can get is now more important than ever because we can do something with it with more rigor than in the past.
And I mean, I'll echo what all these guys said. I think being able to personalize at scale in a way that really takes the customer's experience and privacy into account is incredibly important. I think they're at the risk of having other people regulate you, you also have to regulate yourselves in a way that you purport yourself with class and do it in a way that does not take advantage of the data that you have access to, and make sure that the consumer comes along for the ride. There has to be a value exchange. It can't be done on their backs.
Like Von Burgundy says, stay classy.
Stay classy.
That's great. Hey, everyone, please give a round of applause to our panel. It's been great.